those of you sitting further back, you don't want to come up to this inner table? You're going to go to, yeah, okay. We're, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Yeah. Okay. So good morning. Thank you for being here today. My name is Laura Gómez, and I am a retired UCLA professor and currently a professor at the University of New Mexico. And I know two of the panelists very well, and the other three I've had the chance to meet in the last day. And I think we're going to have a good conversation. I wanted to actually start by just reading the panel description, which I found very powerful. And I just want to read it so that it kind of just to situate us in our, as we start and inspire us. If I can find the page, which I thought I had more. There it is. Okay, because I think it's very, very telling. So this panel is entitled Divergent Paths, Immigrant Belonging in Arizona and New Mexico. We will discuss the successful policies passed in New Mexico during the last 25 years that allow immigrant New Mexicans to pursue higher education and workforce training, obtain driver's licenses, receive protection from wage theft and discrimination, and access state-guaranteed basic income pilots. By contrast, Arizona has passed several anti-immigrant laws, including a ban on cities passing sanctuary policies, served as the center stage for racist policing as immigration enforcement, and is home to many localities that use immigration detention centers as a means for economic development. But Arizona has also served as an incubator for participatory defense community organizing, led by directly impacted people from Puente to Red de DefensAZ. This panel will explore the reasons behind these divergences and what they can teach us about non-carceral futures in the Southwest. And what I am gonna just talk about now is a little bit about the format that we have in mind for today. So we're gonna do kind of a roundtable discussion rather than presenting formal papers. We will have about 65 minutes of talking heads, as it were, and then try to open it up for you guys for more of a dialogue, or to have you guys ask each other questions if you want to pursue some of that. So we should have enough time to have a nice conversation that way. So I will just try to be the facilitator in this project, and hopefully not too interjecting one. But I will toss out my first request is for each of you to take 5 minutes to introduce yourselves. Maybe we'll just start at that end. Ale is here by the time it gets to her. But take 5 minutes, and 5 minutes is a good chunk of time, right? So I want you to tell us and tell each other sort of who you are as a person and what drove you into this work and this interest, and what kind of work you've been doing in either Arizona or New Mexico. Okay, so, and I will, Jasmine is going to give you, when there's 1 minute left, if you want to go over, that's okay, but, just try to keep it moving. I thought 5 minutes would be a nice start, but don't be shy about really telling us who you are and what makes you passionate about this work and what motivates you. And then we will continue. Yeah, so Yvette, Borja.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here today. I'm so thrilled to be talking about this work that I think is so important in this moment. In terms of my inspiration and what motivates me, I would have to say it starts with my parents' story. They were asylum seekers who fled the Salvadoran Civil War in the 1980s and made their lives in the Bay Area. That's my lens and what drove me to want to do immigrant justice work. I was benefited a lot from their decision to move to the U.S. And saw it as a responsibility of mine to pay it forward and to try and improve immigrant belonging in the U.S. Because of the decisions that they made. In terms of how I got into participatory defense, it was definitely through Pablos, and I'm so excited to have her here today because I know that she's a few of the people on this panel's muse. But she's someone who fought her own deportation defense campaign. I met her in 2019 when she came onto the Radio Cachimbona podcast, which I'll take a second now to describe the project. It's an abolitionist podcast that focuses on border and immigration issues, which is why I had Ale on the podcast to talk about her Keep Ale Free deportation defense campaign. And I would say I organically did participatory defense before I understood what it was. But Ale and myself and her legal team were using her deportation case as a community education tool to shed light on the late 90s laws that criminalize legal permanent residence, the over-criminalization of Black and brown people in Arizona, and the devastating immigration consequences that can have. And after that initial interview with Ale, I just sort of followed her around everywhere after that. And with DefensAZ in particular, was inspired by my time as a legal orientation program attorney at the Florence Immigrant and Refugee Rights Project. I have started saying that it's my villain origin story because that was where I was really exposed to the horrific injustices of immigration detention, the ways in which it's slow death, and became committed to shutting down Eloy and organizing to construct alternative economies that aren't dependent on immigration detention and imprisonment. And I would say that's what motivated the DefensAZ. We wanted to empower the family members of people who are detained, knowing the huge stigma that attaches to deportation and detention. And I think if I had to sum it up, I think the project of the DefensAZ is a group of directly impacted, system-impacted people who are trying to get ourselves and our community free. Ale!
Come around this way. You're right here.
Yeah. So I actually have no idea where I'm at on time. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm good.
Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. I'm from the south side of Tucson. How did I get involved? So I have been an abolitionist before I got involved in the DefensAZ. I think it has to do with my family origins too. My dad is from Dominican Republic and my mom is from Mexico. And growing up, my dad was very political with us. Like he would teach us about colonial history of Dominican Republic, about human rights here in the United States. And so I actually got involved in work since I was younger, since I was a teenager. It was more around environmental justice. So I grew up in the city of South Tucson, which is a city within Tucson. It's very poor. We lack trees in Tucson. Arizona is very hot. Yeah, like in summers, sometimes it gets 120, and in the south side it can be hard because of lack of tree equity. So how I really got politicized was growing up in the south side, just wondering like, why am I living next to a highway? Why is it so hot compared to richer, wider parts of town? And realizing like my life matters, my health matters, my community matters, and we deserve to have health, tree equity, and all the environmental resources. And then from there I started to learn about food deserts and environmental racism, and yeah, and then my main work has been around environment, health, and abolition. So I also spent some time teaching comprehensive sex ed through a real health clinic as a peer educator. And then from at the same time, I was going to school at the University of Arizona And that is when I met Ale and Yvette. So yeah, in the U of A, I was studying environmental studies and Latin American studies, and I was still organizing within my community in the South Side. And so in January of 2024, in a community space in South Tucson, I already had known Ale and our friend Yaritza, who is part of the DefensAZ here. But this is the first time I met Yvette, and it was a co-learning space, so we were learning, doing Skillshare, and that day, Ale and Yaritza were teaching about what is participatory defense and how we could start doing that in Tucson. And I was interested, and yeah, they recruited me. So yeah, the DefensAZ was like not officially like a group. We were a group, but like not really official until summer. So then I graduated from the U of A in May, and I got hired by the Tucson Bail Fund. So I was working. The Tucson Bail Fund was explicitly an abolitionist org. So we were trying to end pre-trial detention in Arizona, focusing that bail for Black and brown people was at higher rates for the same thing that like a white person does, and how that contributes to poverty, etc. And yeah, or like people were detained for more time for the same crime as a white person. I mean, more time than a white person was. So acknowledging the racism in the criminal system. So that is when I tried to organize the DefensAZ with the Tucson Bail Fund. So yeah, so we try to do some work together. We try to do like a welcome out, like so when people got out of the jail, like have support resources to reintegrate the community. But then I started to get trained to visit at Eloy Detention Center, and that is when I started to do work visiting detained migrants in the detention center. And yeah, since then I have been visiting for a year now, and now I train new volunteers on how to visit and just navigate.
Gabriela, Guzmán.
Hi, good morning. Hello. Hi, my name is Gabriela Ibañez Guzmán. I am a staff attorney at Somos, Pueblo, Unido. We are celebrating our 30th year this year. And similar to what Professor Crenshaw said last night, there is nothing new. We were born out of Prop 187, started here in California, and had ramifications throughout the country, including spurring organizations like Somos. I am a Chicagoan who has been in the Southwest now for more than 20 years. I'm also part of the Chilean diaspora. I am the first U.S. person born in the United States. My sister was born 7 days after the military coup, our September 11th. So she was born during curfew. So she's like my torch of freedom. She's such a light in my life, even though she was born I was lucky enough to take my family to Chile in 2023, 2024, so my two kids went to school in Santiago. And just, I didn't plan this, but it was the 50th anniversary of the military coup there. And so there were a lot of events around Memoria, and this is to this day, you can, as a Chilean, you can mark where you stand in terms of the dictatorship. Was it necessary to this day? People in Chile have this debate, was the dictatorship necessary? Things were getting too crazy, out of control. We had to have a very sharp and horrible, horrific military coup to stop what people thought was just so much disarray, which was a manufactured crisis, and that's very well documented in the United States involvement and all of that. But I share all of that because I have been thinking so much about my year in Chile and the 50th anniversary and marching through what we're marching through. And I agree there is a great opportunity now if wonderful things like Somos and CRS, CRT can come out of these crises. I'm really looking forward to what can really come out of this moment. This is really awful, but I also, after having participated in here, feel reinvigorated to do this type of work. Some people will say, oh, I had no idea New Mexico was such a progressive state. I believe in being humble, but I really think my organization in our 30 years of work have really pushed New Mexico to be the progressive state it is. Will show when I start talking about all the work, all of the list of accomplishments we've had in the last 30 years, and everything from in-state tuition and in-state financial aid back in 2005 for young people who graduated from a New Mexico high school, our driver's license law, our anti-bias-based policing, our fortifying of our state minimum wage. New Mexico has New Mexico, Santa Fe, and Santa Fe County have one of the highest minimum wages in the country right now. It's $15. Again, because of the work of Somos, which is a collection of immigrant workers, families, pushing progressives to be better progressives. And I look forward to the conversation.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Mariel. I'm visiting UCLA from UC Berkeley, so just up the way. I'm a third year at the Jurisprudence and Social Policy program over there. And I'm originally, though, from Nogales, Arizona, which is just, you can see right there, just right there on the border. I was raised there. That no doubt informs my research, right? Just being a person from the border and being normal for so long, right? Having sort of these the checkpoints, the this, the that. Driving to Tucson, getting the checkpoints, always have, and so that informed a lot of my work. I went to the University of Arizona as well, Verdun, in 2019, and that is actually where I met Ale. Ale is just one of the idols for all of us, right? And she helped me, and a good friend of mine, Denise Moreno, who's not here but could really be here, and we were part of the Arizona 3 in Tucson in 2019, and we what we're seeing right now on university campuses with students protesting and ICE. So we did that in 2019 at University of Arizona when Borja was on campus armed giving a presentation. And there was a lot of legal and community and academic ramifications for that. Supported us. And the whole community of Tucson, right? And so in that experience, in my time at U of A, I just learned so much about just like outside of Nogales, right? Like outside this normalized militarized zone and just how much power there was out there, right? And so, I really just took that, all of my connections, all my resources, all my friends, my community members, and I just decided to go for it with being in school. I volunteered a lot at the IRC, did some citizenship, naturalization workshops and things like that. And then I decided, once I got my master's in human rights practice, I just wanted to do more. And Ali also helped me for that paper too. We talked about just like feminicides, the violence on women's bodies and more generally, right? And just like the importance for just community coalition building, and like that is one way that we can like attack these things, right? We have academia, but we also have on the ground movement, and if we can combine them, like we can make some really great stuff, you guys. And so I went and I worked at Florence at FERP, Immigrant Rights, Refugee Rights Project, based out of Tucson. I worked for the DART team, which is the Direct Action Response Team. And we provided folks detained in ICE detention with pro se services, gave bond parole info sessions, and assisted with KYR, and then eventually just assisting with people's cases. And that was just like like Yvette said, you just see the injustices happening, and such limited resources, right? But you do what you can, and that really misinforms so much. There's no way you can leave, right, after having these experiences and not carry them with you into your work. So, yeah, like just understanding, the political economy of, border communities and prisons communities. Like these are all intricate to understanding, like, understanding like the political importance of all of this, right? How embedded is this stuff in our laws, in our ideologies, right? And that's what I've been trying to understand since I started like thinking about these things forever. But in this sort of academic parlance and community spaces as well, it's like, what can we gain? What we gain, it's like important intersectional overlapping similarities, right? And we are all need to historically bring that to context with that, and that is how we can inspire each other. That's what inspires this work. We need to just kind of, I'm just happy to be here and share my experience living in the U.S. Mexico. Just the amazing people that I've met since like moving out of there, and I think it's important presentation.
What's up, friends? Hey, everyone. I apologize for being late. My name is Alejandra. I use pronouns she and her. I just wanted to say that it's really bittersweet for a lot of my friends to like talk about me and just say nice things, and it feels really weird too. But it's like great, and then it's like this feeling of like I think the same thing about everyone else. Like I don't know anything. Sharing my experience or whatever I learned from everybody else, and I feel the same way about all of you. Also, I'm always just being in love with your friends. What a beautiful feeling. Amongst all the violence and all the nasty stuff that comes with doing the work that we're doing, it's so discouraging right now to support families being impacted by detention and deportation. But I just think about the work that we're doing, and I'm like, if I would have had groups like this when I went into the deportation pipeline, things wouldn't have been as tough, the trauma wouldn't have weighed so much. Really excited that people are so committed to doing defense work and building relationships. I think at the end of the day, this work is about building relationships, right? So we have these relationships with these families that are going through detention and deportation, and I think at the end of the day, when there's not a lot of wins in that work, the wins is those relationships. The wins is seeing these community members being like, oh, there's organized communities. Oh, I can go here and talk about my story. And again, being so in love with the people that received me, because when I came into the movement space and started to talk about deportation, people received me. People received me because they couldn't judge me. But all I felt growing up was stigma, policing, right, surveillance. Okay, so now about me, a little bit more about me. I'm showing up today without my baby. Now I'm a mama, so that's a really cute intro addition. It's all right. People will know Alejandra. Thank you, Mariel. So my baby and my partner are actually at home because we've traveled from Arizona, but we're staying in a new place on my cousins, and logistics were tough, so long morning. But anyways, I made it. But yeah, so I'm a new mama, and I love that title. I'm so in love with this baby boy that hopefully does not grow up to see a Trump, the past by the time he starts, being more conscious. But I grew up in the border. I actually grew up in Southern California. I'm from Santa Ana, born in Nogales, Sonora on the other side. And growing up not knowing how complicated immigration system was, my mom naturalized when I was like 14 years old, and she just didn't put any paperwork in this for me. I was like, filed anything, and next thing you know it, because a lot of us thought, or my parents thought like, oh, when you're a citizen, your young kids will just be citizens like you. I don't know if y'all ever heard that, but when they're minors, they take your citizenship, and that was a thing. So I wanted to work. I I went to go get my work permit. And then later on, being a young person in the south side of Tucson, overpoliced, over-sentenced, right? Where we have probation officers in our schools, right? When we just, I started to have interactions with the police. Next thing you know it, Border Patrol or ICE picks me up at my probation office. I took a probation deal. They forced me to take a probation deal, and it changed my life, completely changed my life. I got into deportation proceedings in 2011, and I started organizing for my life since then. And I think everything that people say here, everything that you all will hear today, has been informed by that turn of events, going into detention and seeing what was happening, not just in our backyard, but across the Americas. And I started to really decriminalize myself and stigmatize myself and shame myself and release so much of the fake news that they were telling us. So I think being in there has informed what we do now, what we're going to talk about, how we organize, how we support families, how we do cultural work to talk about this kind of work, and how we don't back down and we censor joy at the same time.
Thank you. Wonderful introductions. Since we have a relatively small group, what about if we just hear a quick, just tell us your name, Jasmine, we'll start with you, but just tell us your name and like how you relate to this conference maybe, or what this topic if you'd like, but just a short round, just so they know now who is in the audience.
Okay, well, I'm Jasmine Johnson. I'm an LLM student at UCLA.
Like a graduate student, or not? You've already got your law degree.
Yes, I already have a JD from St. John's Law. I'm doing an entry because I can't get enough of school. No, but I want to specialize in critical race studies, so I'm spending a year studying that. I'm a litigation attorney at the same time. I'm still working. And I'm here in general as part of the CRS conference, and I've been assigned as a volunteer in this room, so that's why I'm specifically.
I'm Kat Robinson. I'm 22. I'm doing the Master's in Legal Studies program, so I don't want a JD necessarily, although this conference is making me reconsider it with everyone being what it is. But my connection with this community, I'm still trying to figure out what path I want to take, but I've always been drawn to border communities. I did work in El Paso at a food bank for a little bit, and I took like one class about specifically border communities, so I just wanted to learn more.
Yes, you. I met you last night, but I don't remember your name. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Good morning, everyone. My name's Elliot. In large part, I'm here because I'm Mariel's partner, but we're both in our third years at the Jurisprudence and Social Policy program at Berkeley Law, and I've become very interested in a lot of stuff. We have a lot of conversations and our offline times, which probably annoys her because I'm learning. But my own research focuses on gun violence. I worked in sort of collaborative non-police forward strategies for gun violence prevention in Oakland for a while now, and my research focus is how Oakland's pattern of political and economic development relate to contemporary patterns of violence.
My name is Daniel Torres. I was born in Puerto Rico, but I moved to Douglas, Arizona when I was 8. It's one of those border towns right there. So yeah, I directly relate to this topic. I grew up with a lot of people who were undocumented, their parents were undocumented. So yeah, but in large part, as well as him, I'm here because I'm Emily's partner. Yeah, I'm excited to hear.
Representing, okay.
Hello everyone, my name is Roxana Sierra. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, Pico Union, Koreatown. My parents are both immigrants from Mexico, and immigration has been a big part of my life, my identity, my passion. And then I volunteered with Esperanza Immigrants' Rights Project during the family separation in 2018, 2019. And that kind of convinced me to go to law school, but also Yvette's podcast Cerebronas and Radio Cachimbona inspired me to kind of also pursue it as someone who is an abolitionist who does believe in like the humanity of people, and the law is all sorts of it's all sorts of fucked up. And also from our foster youth, so I had a lot of interactions with the police and child protective services when I was young. So youth work is also something that's really dear to me, which is why I moved to Boston to work in AmeriCorps with immigrant youth there. And I think that was one of the best decisions I've made, to travel to a state that's not California, kind of see like the differences, like what other states are doing, because I just thought California was the norm, but then I realized like it's not. And then during law school, I had the opportunity to go to Louisiana to visit the detention centers there, you know your rights, and I tried really hard not to do immigration in law school, but that experience kind of changed me, in that like I saw such a need, and I thought if I identify so strongly with immigrants and the immigrant community and love the immigrant community, doesn't want to do this work, who else would do it? Because if not me, then who else? Which is a little vain, but yeah, so then now I'm an immigration attorney, again with Esperanza, working with unaccompanied youth. Love it. So far, it's been a tough first year, but I wouldn't change it for the world, and I hope to continue to like learn more. And I think it's really valuable as immigration attorneys to understand the differences in different states and like how immigrants live. That's also such a big component of like the kind of services and support.
Yes, and would you like to share with us before you leave? I know you have to go.
I have to apologize that I can't stay, but I learned recently a little bit more about the whole idea of participatory defense from Yvette, and wanted to learn more. I'm really so impressed with this panel, what I've heard so far, and I want to thank you so much for allowing me to join.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sitting in.
It's already, I know it's only the first part, but it was already very impactful. So thank you.
So with that, why don't we start with you this time as we go down the line? And I have some prepared questions, but I actually think it'd be better for you guys just talk about what you take 5 minutes again, right, to talk about whatever you want to talk about with each other, with this audience. You know, just share any aspect of the work or what's on your mind, or it's your time.
Okay, what do I want to talk about?
Well, a lot of people might be curious. Do you want me to ask my question? Okay, because maybe a prompt and then you can go where you want to go. So my question for you would be, tell us about defending yourself against deportation and sort of what that was like, what you did, what came after that, what came out of that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember we had a signal chat I started, and it was like Ale versus ICE. And anybody I knew would get on it if you accepted, because I'm like, one day I'm gonna need to get this signal chat. And that day came, a little too early, but it came. So I pled guilty to a drug paraphernalia, basically, when I was young. And the lawyer at the time was like, "Oh, you'll plead guilty. The plea is plead guilty to a felony 6. Okay, talking about felony for like a little paraphernalia.
Yeah, 6-degree felony.
And at the time, I didn't know nothing. I'm young. I'm like, you don't tell nobody nothing. I didn't tell my mom. Nobody knew. Probably none of my friends either. Whatever. And he's like, yeah, it's a felony 6. It's designated though when you're done with probation, because you just have to do your probation. It'll go down to a misdemeanor. And at the time, I was getting in trouble so much already that I was like, oh, I gotta get my shit together and I gotta become a citizen. I was a resident. But I didn't really know much, and I became a resident because I wanted to work, and I got a work permit. That's that pipeline there, but I didn't really understand, And I was like, I can't get a felony because I just started to look into that I have to become a citizen. You can't have a felony. He's like, no, but it's a necessity. misdemeanor. It's like, you're gonna be done with probation right now at 10 a.m. Get your shit together, you know? And 5 months into my probation, ICE comes in plain clothes to take my ass up. And I don't come home for 2 years. They take me to a bunch of different places, detention centers, icebox, we call them, I guess, now. And I land in Eagle Detention Center. And still there, seeing everything, seeing all the people there. It's wild, all the people classified in different colors, levels of risk, and how they criminalize you. I'm like, oh, there must be a mistake. I'm a resident. I'm about, they're gonna get me out anytime, you know. I turned, weeks into months, and into years. And people had been there for a year, longer than me, you know. People were there, and it was just such a culture shock and just an awakening and an opening. And while, there was dreamers fighting, people fighting for immigration reform. This is 2011, 13, the Obama years, the, felons, not families. I was both. Right? I'm like, what? So, but again, I'm being politicized in the Eagle Detention Center, right? Because I also had a very privileged life. Because our family, it was a mixed status family, so people had some citizenship, we had businesses, people got to work. There was levels of people covering each other up. So I really never thought about my immigration status. I didn't live undocumented, I didn't live here, even though half of my family lived. So I think that plays out a lot. To be able to feel safe, you need to have jobs, homes, housing, right? We had that, So anyways, I went into detention for 2 years, and it changed my life, my mom's, my brother's. My brother was in Kuwait fighting somebody's war. And my mom visiting me every year, becoming the organizer that I needed to see, the organizer I am now. Made sure there was not a weekend that I was not visited, and it was an hour and a half from our hometown, Tucson. So it was Tucson, Phoenix, and Eagle. It's kind of in the middle. Really, really far, and just, so you gotta be committed to go there, and spend some money. But anyways, being inside politicized me. I saw community organizations go inside, so people were visiting inside, and that was very important. So that's why we know that through visitation, we have a connection to people to the outside, because they make it to where you don't have no information from the outside, right? The law library was super ancient. I remember being like, how am I supposed to have updated shit? And at the time I was already graduated from the U of A, and I'm and I don't understand shit or know shit or whatever. Anyways, just kind of awoken me, and I started to see the organizing happening. The dreamers came in, organizing and doing hunger strikes inside. So jumped on that, and then came home to a bond hearing only because we got attention on the media, and we started to organize. My family started being supported by organized communities outside. And once my family and the organized communities met up, it was fire, and I had to be released. And I came home just to organize and to build power and relationships, unlearn a lot myself, right? Do a lot of political education. I had to really unlearn and relearn a lot. And then 10, 11, 12 years later, now a part of a lot of deportation defense campaigns, and now freeing myself more and more, because now I'm about to become a citizen, maybe. I don't know what Trump is doing. Maybe I won't go to my application. But finally, we got my case closed, and because a lot of fundraising, a lot of community, a lot of storytelling to get people to support you, So I think that's what's really important, and I had to pay a lot of legal fees to do post-conviction relief, which is not something immigrants people are doing with their cases, and that's something that we're focusing on a lot, is getting people to go back to their charges to see what we can do to get a different outcome.
Thank you. Mariel, I'm going to ask you a question, but you are free to ignore it.
Oh.
Okay? So you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. But I understand that your work is building on or bringing together ideas of settler colonialism with carceral clustering and resistance. And I was just wondering if you want to share with us about your work and your research. But again, talk about something else.
No, I think I'll take that as the main driver, and then maybe I can talk a little bit about why that's. So I'll just.
That's good.
Okay, so so this research, let me see, timer on now.
You guys are so good.
I know.
Pros.
Yeah, it's not gonna work. This work came about, like I said, for so many reasons. Mostly it was after my time working at FERP, which is the Florence Immigrant Rights Project. And just like being shocked, like driving to Florence every day from Tucson, because that's where I was living, after I lived in Nogales, I went to UCLA. So Tucson, I would drive every day, not every day, but several times a week to Tucson to Florence and back, you know, and the freeway actually doesn't go like up, right? It's like that way. So that's like the real more like
the I-10.
Yeah, it's the I-10, then you're off the I-10 for a long time until you get to like this rural vast place, right? And so I was just like, what is this place? Like, there's like remnants of what used to be, right? There's like old signs indicating like lavadera or like you know, or Columbus, and it's just like denigrated in some areas, right? But then you have this like hyper militarization of just like different services, people coming in to work in this place, and like nobody lives here, right? And so nobody lives here, as in like ICE, you know, ICE, all these industry workers, right? They're coming from other places, just like me, right? I'm traveling to go to this job and to visit people in nice detention. And so when I got to fast forward, all of that in my mind, I was like going out taking pictures. I was like, this is so weird. I was on my ethnography thing. And then I get to Berkeley. I'm in a class with my advisor, Jonathan Simon, and with Elliot is in this class as well. And for my final paper, I like write something about this. I'm like, let me do a genealogy of the immigration prison and see how it can relate to like my life and what I understand about being in the border community, and then seeing like, you know, Arizona is just very like this punitive state, right? It's like we've passed, as per the description, we've passed several anti-immigrant laws, a ban on passing, you know, sanctuary cities, right? And it just serves as like a huge center stage for like just racist policing on immigration, on people more generally, right? And so, you know, that to me is really indicative, right? When we see like, we have this border community, we have like checkpoints, we have, you know, this strange place where there's immigration courts, there's, you know, a bunch of ICE detention mixed with other types of carceral spaces, right? And that's kind of what this carceral cluster is. Jonathan and I were like talking about carceral clusters. You know, it can be a lot of things, right? It's been called a lot of things. You know, carceral cities, carceral landscapes, you know, carceral lands. But what we mean, what's peculiar about the carceral clusters thing, right? When we say cluster, it's a group of similar things or people positioned, occurring closely together, right? Or in its verb, it's to be or come into cluster, or a close group, congregate, right? And so it's like when you have an infrastructure from Florence that has been instituted into their, you know, statehood formation, right, with the state of Arizona since 1912. You have a prison in Florence since 1912. You have the infrastructure there already. You have the format. You have the blueprint, right? And so, yeah, it's like this material condition, right? It's the geography, it's the foundation, it's the ways in which they overlap and join in proximity. And, you know, Yvette will talk about how other places, right? So when you create this political economy, you have this sort of dependence on this prison formation in this space, the political economy can go in any direction, right? The divergent path is that Eloy got constructed in the 90s as an unincorporated town to kind of house additional prisons. And that also becomes this story that we need to kind of pay attention to, right? So, it's Kafkaesque, it's interesting, it's weird, but I think the idea is that we have all of this because of the sort of historical conjunctures that the state formation in Arizona took from its territory to its state, right? And I'm more than happy to go into those details, but I just kind of wanted to lay that out for right now, like where that settler ideology was coming from when I was thinking about these things.
much.
It's a-
Yeah.
You know.
Gabriela, so I know you're outnumbered by the Arizonans, but you and I are here from New Mexico. As you were talking, Mariel, I was thinking about my book, Manifest Destinies, and setting up some of that history that pre-statehood, New Mexico and Arizona both became states at the same time in 1912, and they had very different. First of all, there was no Arizona that was a white project, right? That was a project to separate from New Mexico, deliberately to create the territory of Arizona. And maybe that's what accounts for some of the unique dynamics. But tell us about what Somos has been doing in these movements and these projects, and any aspect of your work that you want to share with us.
I'm going to answer that question, but I'm also going to
whatever you want to
respond as well. And this is a little bit of a strange space for me because whenever I present, I'm always presenting on the work. I don't talk about myself necessarily. It's always about the work. The organization.
Like that dichotomy of the personal
like,
versus the professional.
Right,
Exactly. Well, you do whatever you want with your time.
I wanted to respond to Ade's story, and because it sounds like my family, Yvette's family, even 45 years later, still says, to this day, my mother will share that she regrets not forcing my brother at 15 to become citizens. So my family adjusted through amnesty in '86. And my mom and my sister were very, very diligent. As soon as they could become naturalized, they did it. But my mom, for some reason, she asked my brother, "Do you want to become a U.S. citizen, or do you want to wait, mijo?" And same sort of thing. Like my brother was very social. He got involved in things. Got a criminal record. Which is biting him now as a almost 50-year-old man who needs to access services because he is having a number of health issues. And he might not ever be able to become a naturalized citizen because of all these things, blah, blah, blah. And your story just reminded me of how important it is to have organizations like Somos where we do legislative work, which for me is like what keeps me hooked on doing this type of work, because you are doing legislative work that impacts our driver's license laws that impacted 80,000. And the fight to keep our...
And it was the first one in the country.
Right. To keep our tiered system. So you can have a real ID for the people who want a real ID. And then you can have a non-real ID, a standardized license, which is a mixed license. And so shout out to people who have non-real IDs because it includes citizens, non-citizens, at least in New Mexico and the other states like California that have tiered systems. But really showcase what the impact can be when families are connected to these organizations that are community-based, that are organizing with the community, serve as a resource center, not only just for legislation, but also for what's happening, where is my loved one, what can be done, connect me to the good immigration attorneys, and steer me away from the ones who are just like, adios. Just having that resource be part of that movement. And so, thank you for sharing. I really responded and felt your story. To try and get to your question as well, Professor Gómez, in one of the campaigns I was going to share is, in contrast to the story of Eloy. One of our first adversarial campaigns at Somos was at the very beginning, starting in like 1998, 99, where we were being sold the same story that, make our old state penitentiary a segregated immigration detention center would somehow be economic development. It would have brought 40 jobs to San Jose County, but back then, it was what was happening. It was the outgrowth of IRA and President Clinton and triangulation. I'm remembering all of the phraseology from then. And it was Somos coming together with other allies like the church. The church is very strong, Catholic Church is very strong in New Mexico. Other allies like the NAACP, neighborhood communities coming together, and also, I mean, to a certain extent, he was maybe part of the initial issue was this very young Santa Fe County Commissioner who had political aspirations, and he thought there were people whispering in his ear that this was a good way to bring jobs and it would be a way to help build his resume. And he was also a Stanford grad, just sharing, that he thought this was a good idea. But what perhaps really, I don't know if it really impacted him, but one thing that I think stuck with him was that he did have political aspirations, and we do have this history in Santa Fe County, priding ourselves in being progressive and really open-minded and welcoming. I'm going to go over this by a minute. And even though the county commission had voted, and he voted to open this segregated immigration detention center, we, Somos, gathered all of those allies, and still we ran and said, if you have political aspirations, you are going to forever be tied to the immigration detention center, Santa Fe County. And I think that really weighed on him. And he decided to rescind his vote, and he was the domino effect. He rescinded, and then other county commissioners rescinded, and he went on to become the mayor of Santa Fe a few years later. But that his political career perhaps would not have been possible had he moved forward with the idea of opening this detention center that had this terrible history. It had been home to this terrible prison revolt in the 1980s. It was just a marked history that to this day people talk about the Moran Decree, they talk about the penitentiary, Old Main, and what a horrific sight it is to this day. And so that's how we were able, we didn't think we were going to, we really thought we were going to lose that campaign because the national wave was immigration detention center, was economic development. And thankfully in Santa Fe County we were able to hold that at bay.
Was this also the same year, or around the same time that the legislature abolished the death penalty in New Mexico?
No, New Mexico abolished the death penalty within like the last
I thought that was
5
2000.
years.
I'd know
This
that.
first campaign was back in 98, 99, and 2000. In Santa Fe County, but we, as a state, we abolished the death penalty within the last 10 years.
Emily, so you mentioned in your opening remarks that you're an abolitionist, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you understand abolition. I was going to say prison abolition, but maybe that's not how you understand it, so how you understand it. And maybe the work that you've done with DefensAZ too.
So for me, when people ask me what is abolition, I always relate it back to the Haitian Revolution. So my dad is from the Dominican Republic, and Haiti was the first free black republic of the Americas. They were the first people to abolish slavery, and recently I had learned history of the island that Haiti had freed the entire island from Spain and France 3 times. In every constitution they had said we abolish slavery. And I think it's very important as someone who is Dominican to bring this up because right now Dominican Republic is very anti-Haitian. Dark-skinned black Dominicans and Haitians were having even more punitive migration system due to kind of revisionist history that occurred in the colonial and now modern history. And so an example of this, my dad and my friend and some Dominican people that born and grew up on the island had told me, I asked, why are Dominicans treating Haitians like that? And they say it's Haiti took over the island. it's a revisionist history. I learned recently that it was a government unification that the Dominions of the asked for a Haitian military to help kick out the state, and then they separate themselves from Haiti. But in schools, which is backed by the church and white Dominicans, they say Haitians invaded the law. And now, since my friend told me in Dominican Republic, if you're Dominican and you say what is happening right now in Dominican Republic is wrong, you can lose your job, scholarships, you will get threatened. It's very violent. And so, even to this day, Haiti is paying the cost for being the very first abolitionist in America. And I think how it ties into the work that I'm doing now is that we know that prison system comes from slave patrol and a colonial system, and it has been detaining Black people at disproportionate rate, and even with migration system to detaining Black migrants. I had saw a chart the other day that an org had produced that Haitian migrants are seeing disproportionate detention time. And right now the Haitian government is not functioning to receive migrants. And so they will be stuck in detention for years and years. Or a lot of time, Black migrants, especially Haitians, are seeing more expensive bail if they are offered bail, and the Dominican Republic is not offering any type of like support. And so yeah, that's why I think it's important for me to say I'm an abolitionist and to tie it back to abolitions because it's part of my history. And yeah, so about my work with the DefensAZ. So yeah, I started. I read the book Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis in 2023 in that period. And I knew that I supported abolition, but I really did not know, I guess, like the specifics of it. So I read that book, and it it further encouraged my politics in abolition. And then I had known the bail fund through community organizing. And then when I graduated, they're like, "We want to hire you," and I was like, "Yes, I love it." So that was like a really proud moment for me to be hired by the bail fund, especially because the bail fund started with a Black family in Tucson that were part of the Black Lives Matter work in Tucson, and supported my same values of abolition, and then that led me to the abolitionist.
Yvette, and Yvette is here as a fellow and on her way to becoming a law professor. She's got her second interview on Tuesday, so we got to all send good vibes Tuesday, and then she's got a couple more after that. So maybe tell us a little bit about what you're writing about, participatory defense, what it means, and anything you want to address.
Yeah.
Or respond to, whatever.
So in the law review article that I've been working on that's coming out next year, I'm tracking the evolution of participatory defense. It started within the criminal legal system. Silicon Valley Debug coined the model, and it was meant to interrupt criminalization. And various organizations like the Orange County Rapid Response Network took the model and applied it to deportation defense. And I think that the DefensAZ intervention is doing participatory defense with people who are detained and their loved ones. I think it's the hardest way in context to apply the model because people of the intentional isolation that people experience in detention, but that's also the most important reason why we should do participatory defense. It's a model that empowers the criminalized person. To Ale's point, when people experience criminalization, when they're placed in deportation proceedings, there's immense shame and stigma. And participatory defense allows people to move out of that and to understand the context in which their oppression is happening. And so it allows people to realize that this is more than like an individual fault of theirs. Their story is a part of a larger story of the criminalization of Black and brown people. And it's an important move because, and I think it's also ultimately a part of abolitionist strategy because it creates directly impacted advocates like Ale who go on to speak about the larger injustices of the system and really call for larger systemic reform. And in the article, I'm trying to articulate what the best intervention for lawyers is, because some might think that it's even controversial that I'm arguing that there's a role for lawyers to play in participatory defense, because it started off as a model. It started off really as a movement to decenter the lawyer and to actually put the criminalized person, the undocumented person, at the center of legal strategy and actually have them become agents of their own legal defense. Some might think, that it's like problematic even that I'm arguing that lawyers have a role to play. But I think just through our own community organizing and realizing like my own knowledge and skill set is valuable in these certain contexts, I argue that actually because of the role that lawyers play, defense lawyers play in making the system appear fairer than it is, we actually have an obligation to support participatory defense organizing. And the obligation also involves finding out a way to enter the work and not perpetuate power dynamics that exist between lawyers and clients and lawyers and community members, which really involves utilizing the principles of movement lawyering and rebellious lawyering. And it's about building relationships, to Ana's point earlier. The framework that I'm introducing in the article is abogados de confianza, which translates to lawyers that undocumented people or system-impacted people can trust. And the way to become a lawyer that people can trust is by showing up for people when they ask you to show up for them in the ways that they want you to. So the framework, it lays out how lawyers can support these movements, and this is knowledge that comes from the organizers themselves, from Carla Bautista of Transqueer Pueblo, like Ale, really letting lawyers know what they need, which is community-based forms of non-traditional legal advocacy, like coordinating court watch projects, coordinating legal observation at protests, and more generally democratizing legal knowledge, which can be done in a lot of different ways. The co-learning thing where we reviewed Emily was an example of us trying to democratize legal knowledge and try to get people in the south side of Tucson to know about participatory defense and how they can play a role. I think the Radio Chimpona podcast is also an important form of democratizing legal knowledge. And all of these different ways are how lawyers can contribute to the movement and become people who can be trusted, abogados de confianza. And the last thing I'll just say is that this is really important coming out of Tucson in southern Arizona, because there's a dearth of lawyers, and there's also, unfortunately, the existence of notarios and private lawyers who scam immigrants and their hopes, and who defraud them of thousands of dollars for their own profit and gain. So the issue of undocumented people feeling like they don't have lawyers that they can trust is very serious. And I think it comes out of that context, but is applicable like in many different places across the country.
Thank you so much. So we have 20 minutes left, and I would like to ask the five of you, how do you want to use our remaining time? Because there's another panel in here afterwards, right? So we have to figure out 20 minutes.
I was going to say I wanted to talk a little bit about presentation. I'll just spend a little bit of time talking about visitation because I think it's been important for us. So yeah, when Yvette had moved here, I started to visit through Eloy Detention Center. And so I had to get trained. So Eloy Detention Center only allows like attorney or paralegal center or people who volunteer for EVA as Eloy Visitation Accompaniment. And so I had to, I don't have a record. I'm a citizen, so I was able to apply and to volunteer, and so the detention center had to approve me to visit. And so I became a volunteer of EVA, but through like the defense of like the
What is EVA?
Eloy Visitation Accompaniment.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's a network of
Got it.
visitation groups. They coordinate themselves so they don't have days.
Yeah, so I started to visit there because with the DefensAZ we have started to support like three families, and yeah, so we follow a different visitation model than the typical visitation model. Like, for example, like I try to maintain like low like vigilance with ICE. Like I go in a mask, they permit me to go in a mask also to protect myself from viruses. And the defense, the defense deportation watch and their anthology of abuse last year deemed one of the deadliest detention centers of the United States. And so wearing a mask for me was to lower surveillance, but also to not get sick. And I would visit once a month, and the same officer would let me in to visit. And I think it worked because I was visiting for a year, and every time she would ask me the same question. Oh, why are you wearing a mask? And I'll be like, I don't want to get sick. And she wouldn't remember that she wouldn't remember me, or that she would ask me the same question every time I visited, even though they take my ID to sign me in and stuff. So that's one way that we also, what's it called? We try to keep track of the conditions of Eloy by having people visit take down grievances. And one example of this is like during summer this year when I was visiting, I learned that there was a fire that happened in Eloy that has not been reported by Florence. And so through visiting this person that I had built a relationship, she had told me there was a fire and that the detention center did not let them out because at the same time the cameras outside were not working. So the small made two people pass out, and we still don't know if they're in the detention center now or if they're alive, etc. So there has been another situation that happened during summer there where the water wasn't working, and the staff there is like very policy only, and they made them a big thing of ice for the water, the people while the staff get their own water in their own area. So there have been several situations where like dangerous things happen in Eloy, and part of how this goes into our abolitionist strategy is that we want to shut down Eloy and keep track of these situations to argue that they're not the center, and that's why it should be.
So you want to have a 2-minute?
Can we put up my slide for 1 second?
Yeah, totally.
So it can be up for at least 15 minutes. What's on the horizon right now? Back in 2014 until about 2017, and this goes to responding to what's happening. We don't go looking for problems. We have the community tell us what's going on. So we don't rely on the next one, please. So we're really addressing issues that come from the community. So in Farmington, which is called the Four Corners, so it's New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, but it should be called the Five Corners because that includes as well. And so we're hearing from community members that folks were being held beyond their release date in the county lockup. And that was happening because ICE from Albuquerque was sending these ICE detainers. And ICE will tell you up and down, oh, these are just requests, these are just requests. and the sheriff's office, which runs the detention center, was not taking them as requests. They were taking them as, oh, we have to hold them. And so we would have a number of community meetings. We were really looking for a plaintiff, but sometimes it was hard to get a plaintiff. And we were able to find one of our Somos member who had been held beyond her release date for a minor state charge, and she was brave enough to take this to federal court. And this was before U.S. District Court Judge William P. Johnson, who was a Bush appointee. And the one thing that really rubbed him the wrong way is that DHS was not a party to the lawsuit. He's like, what the heck is going on? Why are you honoring these ICE detainers and DHS isn't even in this conversation? And so he, and this was during the Obama administration, he required DHS to bring somebody to Albuquerque. And I had never seen a federal attorney do the dance that they did, that this DHS attorney had to do in saying up and down that these were just requests, that whatever the county was doing was at their own behest. And I think that really sealed the deal in terms of the judge saying, okay, y'all need to, I'm going to rule in their favor if you guys don't figure out a settlement deal. And so we got some money, our plaintiff got some money, but the real crown jewel of this, and I'm going to go over my time again, the real crown jewel of this litigation was the injunctive relief. And the injunctive relief was the county commission had to pass a resolution saying that they would no longer hold people beyond their time solely based on immigration status and this detainer. We have to go back, because as we know, the law is never a complete fix to things. We have to go back because we're hearing rumors again that this is starting to happen again, and we might have to reopen that case. But, you know, it's, again, just the ability to be part of an organization that does legislative work, that does the community resource work, that does the organizing to really respond to the needs. So that's just a testament to our 30 years.
And this is one of the more conservative parts of the state.
Yes.
Okay, Mariel, 2 minutes, more
So-
or less.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say really quickly, just to drive in the point about what I was saying about the settler colonial ideology. You made a great point, and I actually had wanted to get into it, which is why I wanted to say this, is that, you know, it's like, it's not just the micro history of the region of Florence, right? It's this macro history of like westward expansion and the American like Southern Colonial Project, right? And we can like really see that, and we can trace that when we're looking at like, you know, I like to call Florence and all this part of Arizona the Wild West. It really is the Wild West, right? And during and after the settler colonial mission of the U.S. and like the implications that it's had on, you know, this carceral landscape, you know, of Florence, there's like 12, 13 institutions, right? It's juvenile, state, federal, or immigration, private.
Incarceration institutions.
Incarceration institutions, right? And that's where that like carceral clusters come in, right? So these carceral institutions are home to people who have been entangled in this criminal legal system, or you know maybe one of the effects of the carceral clustering is that it like continues to perpetuate this like civil litigation thing, right? And that's where we get that criminalization, right? And that is like there's like this mental link between the civil and criminal, right? And like the carceral clusters are like this manifestation of that, and I argue. And so that's why it's so important to have an understanding of carceral clusters in Florence, in Arizona, and also maybe thinking more broadly about like them in other spaces. And that's a paper forthcoming with Simon. Watch out for it. But you know, we can learn so much about immigration, punishment, inequalities that you know, and like the way that all of these things taken into consideration infect and influence ideology, consciousness, right, about these things, about immigration, about punishment, right? And yeah, the goal is to like, we need to really start interrogating these places, you know, even the border, right, even where I'm from. Our whole political economy is surrounded by the border, produce, distribution, customs, custom brokerages getting supplies in, right? And it's not that, you know, I used to think, are the people of Florence and Eastwood complacent? You know, because then I would be like, is the border, people in Dallas complacent? I say, hell no. But I will say, there is something different that's happening in Florence. It's up there, it's closer to Maricopa County, it's closer to that, like, just really raw violence and, like, nasty imagery that people have about the Southwest and Mexicans and the color and indigenous people. And so, yeah, these are just things that I just wanted to, like, talk about. Thank you guys so much. You know, let's just, I don't know. I just don't know.
Thank you. Ale, you have the floor.
No, I feel like if y'all, people that came to the panel, have anything y'all want us to talk about or questions.
Yeah, about a seat into her time,
Yeah.
maybe.
Hi, I'm Sunita, and I teach here at UCLA. And thank you so much. I'm sorry I came in late. I ended up at the wrong panel, and so I got excited about that one. So I'm sorry I'm late. But I wanted to ask you. I have done a little bit of work in the past, like very long time ago, in Arizona, and also been connected with folks in New Mexico many years ago. But so I wondered what you think, or what the role is for people who are outside of the region. How can we support whatever the efforts are locally? And I ask that like with humility, of course, but there's a lot of everywhere, everyone is fighting for their lives, right, in wherever they live. But there is a way in which I think Arizona and New Mexico, and especially southern New Mexico, are they are a forecast in some ways of what's to come in other places. So I wonder how you would best want people in other parts of the country to connect, or whether it's to learn or to provide other kinds of support.
So I will say that we have 8 minutes, and I'm going to keep us on time because there is another event in this room. So are there maybe, Ale, do you want to start, and then Yvette, can I hand it to you for the last response?
Sure. Thanks for that question. I think I think what came to my mind was kind of, to the resource point. I think connecting and people sharing their resources, like really large organizations. For example, I think about the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. You know, now they have staff in Texas, and they're letting a lot of their capacity in Texas. And I'm like, in Arizona.
Yeah.
We also gotta like be ready and organized too, because I think that's what also like connects, right? The national, and I think we just we've been hit differently in Arizona, and the communities that have been organizing are just like in their healing modes, and maybe they're barely coming out again to organize really out loud. But I think sharing resources, and I do think like having conversations together would be really good. I think right now what the Detention Watch Network is also doing is connecting like red states and like having these conversations together, and where does New Mexico and Arizona fall, and like kind of like making those connections. I think already New Mexico folks like from the Innovation Lab have even offered to share with us around some shutdown strategies, right? So like again, sharing strategies would be really great, but I think lending legal resources to the state, because I think one thing that a lot of states have is a lot of organizations that go into the detention centers. If it's not Florence, nobody else is going in there, you know. So I think what's up with these big like national orgs, like legal orgs, and I'm like, capacity over here, like what, like what's going on over here in Arizona, like why are people not? And even right now, more people are looking to Arizona now. They want to fund us, like we just got like some 10K or something, like. Obviously, because our work is great, but like, you know, like now people are like, oh, let's throw money over there, and it's like, okay, not just money, it's also like, what does capacity look like, and you know, so I think, those lessons learned, that the people power sometimes, that people showing up to our campaign calls, right, or whatever, and especially now there's going to be a lot of expansion, and we're going to be hit with that already in our backyard in Moran, and just having access to ELA right now, we just don't even. What was happening with DefensAZ is that we were having a lot of people were actually also staff at Florence project, and we had that internal information sharing, and now, like, you know, it's just it's going to hit us really hard. But I think that's a good question.
Yeah, and I appreciate the framing of like how can people from the outside do it respectfully, because I do think there are a lot of national orgs that parachute in and try and tell people what to do and assume that they have superior strategy. And I think that, like, you know, I like jokingly say that Arizona raised me, just because I feel like that's where I learned how to be the community organizer that I am, and I see the raw talent. And like, the reason I believe in participatory defense is that the people that have been most violently impacted by the system are going to be the ones who are going to get us out of it and who are going to get us free. And I really truly believe in that. So I believe it's about capacity building, to Ada's point, you know, investing resources, time, and training to the people who already have the talent to be abolitionist organizers, but who just need to be invested in a little bit more, I think is important. And then kind of like really on a more practical level, as like people trained as attorneys, we really need habeas attorneys. There's people who are experiencing prolonged detention, and I think there's a lot of different ways that we can be challenging their detention. We're supporting somebody who's stateless and who ICE hasn't been able to deport for that reason. And she's, you know, allegedly because of civitas, there's a 6-month limit to someone being able to be detained post-deport order without ICE being able to successfully, if ICE can't successfully deport you within 6 months, you're supposed to be let free. But what ICE has done is they just reset a hearing, redeported her to like restart the clock for another 6 months. And we've been trying to connect her with a habeas attorney. It's been difficult because just the landscape is so bleak. Like, people said that her procedural posture was better than what other people had been given, because they gave her like a very paltry hearing, and so they like gave her notice. And the attorneys that have been working on other cases are the remedy they're trying to argue for is notice. And so they're like, oh, we can't take her case because that would be a conflict of interest, and she's already been given the remedy that we're fighting for, which is, let's talk about the limitations of litigation and legal work. But anyway, yeah, we need these attorneys, and just like Ale said, just more legal resources in general.
Thank you. I want to invite you to continue these conversations. I know 2 of you will. For sure. But in general, continue this conversation. I want to just thank you 5 for just inspiring us and for the work that you do. It is really so inspiring. And Yvette, I want to thank you for organizing this session for us. And Jasmine, thank you. Okay. Oh yeah, fill out your form. If you guys fill out your recording form for the and Jasmine will pick them up, or pass them down to me. If you finish it. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
If they do, they will.
Right, can take it. Okay.
Like you were saying, like the person's there.
Okay, Ale
And can you do one on
Mariel,
my camera too?
picture.
Oh wait, Ale, you have to have your shirt.
Are they gonna put your shirt for the picture?
Yeah, thanks for the picture.
Oh, the team. Okay.
Our uniforms.
Sure.
I was like, wait, that's what I'm wearing.
Just like what I like.
Do you want us? Do you want us like in more of a in a row like this?
I think this is fine.
This way? Okay.
Everybody comes out in the picture.
No, not at all.
Yeah, maybe if I get like a, yeah,